Welcome to the podcast. We're so glad you joined us today. And I have to tell you right now, there's a transition between sports seasons where we wrapped up football.
Ending football.
And we were starting up basketball.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. And this happens from time to time for us. I'm like...
It's just in a few of our kids, not all of our kids.
Not all our kids. I'm like, really? They're going to make them practice 6 days a week? Seriously? We're not going to the NBA here? I mean, I know some people in the NBA. But our kids aren't one of those kind of people, right? There is something about sports that I feel like sucks the life sometimes out of families.
Yeah, I think it kind of depends, and it depends on how balanced that you can be,
right,
and how your child responds to that. So some kids are going to thrive under that, and some families thrive. But I think it's a matter of having everything in alignment.
It's a big question, knowing how much is too much.
Yeah, it is a good question. And I think that in this podcast, that's what we're going to do. We're going to help parents evaluate how much is too much, and how can we live a balanced life, even doing all of the things, maybe doing the activities that are good for our kids to do, but doing them intentionally and making good choices.
All right. So
but before we get into that,
I am super excited. We have been doing the family board meeting, you and I personally, as a family, as the executives of Hernan Family Inc. For 15, I don't even know. We got to look back. Long time. Many, many years, right? And but we've also been teaching this to other families for the last at least 5 years,
Definitely,
right?
Yeah.
And well, we've been doing it in the podcast longer than that, I guess, a little bit. And it is so great to hear from couples who have done the family board meeting, whether it be on their own.
On the survey, we asked people, what is the most impactful thing that you've learned from Messy Family Project? A number of people, we can go back and get the exact number, said the family board meeting, which makes me really happy.
And again, if you're like, family what? The family board meeting, meaning a time for a strategic retreat for mom and dad to look at and say, where are we going as a family? Where are we right now, and where are we going, and how are we going to get there? Right. Because too quickly we get caught up in the very busyness of family life, right? We're in getting our hands dirty with the kids, and particularly if you're like in a survival zone or other places, you might feel like, I don't have a breath, to myself, or time for myself. We need to carve out space for mom and dad to be able to say, I want to pull my head above the waves and look out and say, are we still heading in the right direction?
Right. Exactly.
Are you and I, are we still in agreement? Are we still united on this plan?
And I think that parents, spouses can have those conversations, but I think that the family board meeting is so important because it helps to focus your conversations. It helps to kind of bring you through a procedure, if you will, a step-by-step way of having conversations and tackling different issues that kind of builds on one another. And so you can not only see where you're at, but also see where do we want to go and how are we going to get there. So family board meeting is starting the first week of December. It starts on the first Thursday of December is when it begins. So if you are interested, you got to sign up. You have to sign up right away because we have a binder of materials that you get. We got to mail that out to you along with a book and along with some other things.
The deadline is actually right now to sign up to get the materials. You can join the digital only version, but to get the materials, you need to sign up right away.
Right. So go ahead and do that.
All right. And then also right now, we're just beginning, right before Thanksgiving, we're beginning our annual appeal. In this ministry, all that we're doing is completely 100% funded by donors like you, people who are willing to donate $100 or $25 or become a monthly $25 or $100 supporter, as well as some who write some bigger checks, which has always been a joy and a wonderful surprise. But we are freed up to serve marriage and family, to make ourselves available because of donors. And so if you're on our email list, you'll be getting a email asking for your support. We'd want you to prayerfully consider that. Consider being generous to allow us to continue this work. There's Alicia and I, as well as about five other people who work. And there's two full-time employees though. I guess I should say it that way, right? There are two full-time employees, myself and Katie. Alicia always wants to remain part-time, and everybody else is kind of part-time and independent. but it takes money to keep this all working. We're reaching just upwards of 50,000 families every single month, and we're teaching more and more courses and programs and offerings. And that's only possible because of donors.
And I think that you can see, if you look at how our ministry has evolved over the past 5 years, what we've been able to do with the donations that we've gotten. Yeah. We've been able to bring on a videographer and someone who can do shorts for us on YouTube and on social media. We've been able to develop courses and hire graphic designers to make beautiful downloads and workbooks. All of these things that we've been able to do are possible because of our donors. Yeah. So please consider supporting us and helping us. There's no big foundation or organization behind us. It's pretty much just what you see is what you get. And so we've been so blessed. And I really feel like it's a confirmation that we're doing what we should be doing when we get those donations, because I feel like God is blessing us through our brothers and sisters in the body of Christ. So if you've already made a donation, thank you so much. And if you haven't, we just ask you to just prayerfully consider that, how you can support us.
Yeah. All right. Well, we want to jump into today's topic. It's how busy's too busy, right? Trying to figure this all out. This is a perennial topic that we all need to revisit. So we want to invite you to take a listen and stay with us at the end, because we have some thoughts for you. Welcome to Messy Parenting, a Catholic conversation on marriage and family. I'm Mike Hernan.
I'm Alicia Hernan.
And we're on vacation. This is the summertime, right?
That's right. We are down at Cove Crest in Tiger, Georgia. It's a Life Teen camp down here. My brother-in-law and sister work here, and we are staying at this incredible facility.
Yeah, it's awesome. They say this is like a rainforest, and it's rained quite a bit.
And yeah, I believe them.
I'm pretty sure that's accurate. But it's been awesome. It's been a nice rain. I'm Irish, so rain doesn't bother me too much. And,
that's right. And I don't have a lot of energy, so sitting around listening to the rain is perfectly fine with me.
Yeah, the kids have had a great time.
Yeah, we're in the mountains, and it's gorgeous up here, and it's not hot.
Yep, been to a number of waterfalls and other scenic sites, and swimming.
Goats on the roof.
That's right. Fun
it's an ice cream
times.
Place.
Anyway, but that's what summertime's all about, right? Just traveling a little bit, spending some time with family, and I like seeing things, but also just like doing nothing, just hanging out.
That's right. And so, ironically, we're going to talk about being busy and scheduling when we don't have any of that this week. Anyway,
that's right. But
it's good to schedule time to do nothing.
That's right. We got to block off some time to do nothing.
Exactly. All right. Well, let's go ahead and pray, and then we will talk about our sponsor and get started.
Awesome.
In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Lord, we thank you for bringing us to this day. We thank you for this place that we are at, and for all of our listeners who are benefiting from just listening to us and just taking some time to think about our schedules and our families. Lord, we thank you for the gift of time that you have given us. Help us to use our time well, to bring us your Holy Spirit, Lord, and help us to know how to use our time well, that in a way that glorifies you. We ask this through Christ our Lord.
Amen. Okay, so today's podcast is sponsored by April Light. April is asking us to address the topic of how to juggle kids' busy schedules. I think April might know a thing or two about this topic, but she and I think
she's a young mom. She has 3 little kids, and she's in the survival zone, so she's doing a lot of juggling right now.
That's right. And insanity is always a part of that. But she also created something called the Master Planner, which we'll link to in our show notes. Mm-hmm. And their planners start in August and run through for like 18 months, it sounds like. Mm-hmm. So if you want to check them out, let us know what you think. But these planners are really designed for moms and students.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because they run during the school year. And that's where so many of us are, new schedule really starts for everybody. When you have a family, new schedule starts at the end of August, beginning of September when school starts. And that's when you have to really, really start thinking about how do you spend your time? Because when everybody goes in different directions, you have to really think about, well, what do we value as a family, and how is that reflected in how we spend our time.
That's
basically.
Right. Yeah, and if I just said to you, show me your time, show me where you've spent your time, I'm going to see what you value, because you're investing yourself in certain things. And it's like, if it's kind of like you look at your checkbook, you look at your day planner or whatever, and if you see where you're spending your time, that's what you value. Without a schedule, you're under the tyranny of the moment, the pressure of the urgent, the things that are just forcing themselves on you. But our priorities, our values, if they're going to be real, they need to be the basis of how you schedule your time, how you prioritize that which you have.
I've realized so much of what we talk about on our podcast comes down to, it really hits home on how you spend your time.
It's about time.
What you do, whether we're talking about family dinner or time with your spouse or individual time with your kids or prayer time or even just Sunday mass.
Right.
Really, it all comes down to, well, when do you actually do these things? Because if your life is in chaos, and like you said, if you're constantly just responding to the urgent,
right.
Your schedule or your routine is not going to be reflecting what you really value.
Right.
I had a good friend of mine point out, she told me this is one of her life philosophies, is that we're all given gifts of talent, money, energy, and time. And so those 4 things determine what we can accomplish in our lives.
In our family, in our whatever.
Exactly. Now, and everybody is given different amounts of energy, different amounts of money, and different amounts of talent. But we're all given the same amount of time.
Right.
And so it's really so important. That is why how we manage our time is really so important.
Right. It matters. It's ultimately the biggest thing that we have. And I mean, that's God is the beginning and the end. He's the creator. Without him, time didn't exist, right? So, but it's our greatest gift that we give back to him is what we do with our time. Because I remember, again, not to get all too philosophical, but we kind of are in the beginning. The idea that like a Ben Carson story. Here he was being raised by a single mom, and his mom forced him to do things when other kids were out spending their time getting in trouble in the streets. His mom was forcing him to read books and do book reports. It's what he spent his time with. I don't know if he was any more exceptional than anybody else in the world, going on to become one of the most celebrated neurosurgeons, right?
He's probably a little bit exceptional.
He probably had natural gifting, right? Pediatric
neurosurgeon, you're right. Mm-hmm.
Anyway, but the point being is that he wouldn't have gotten, even with all those gifts and talents,
Exactly.
if his time wasn't spent properly, he would never be able to take advantage of that. And that's what
Right.
we have. We have to look at this and say, this time is the only, well, I mean, obviously we're all given gifts, but this is the greatest gift that we have insofar as how we return that to the Lord.
Now, I have to say something over the term schedule. So even when our kids were little,
What are you going to pick a fight right away at the beginning of the show?
I've kind of always preferred the term routine over schedule, because schedule in a macro sense of our month, whatever that, or our summer, I'm comfortable with that. But in a daily situation, I hate the term schedule just because kids always throw a wrench in whatever plans you have. It's like, okay, every morning at 8:00, I'm going to do this. But then your kid throws up. It's like, okay, well, that's out the window.
The schedule's, because that's true. Because if you look at it and say that your schedule,
and you're like, I'm 5 minutes off my schedule.
And then your world falls apart, right?
Right.
And it's like, and then, or you are now at the demands of these children. Because I mean, I think as a parent, particularly with young kids, well, actually teenagers too, it's like your kids are going to pull you in many, many different directions. And if you had a rigidity
Right.
to following a schedule, not that we don't value.
Well, I just want to say that instead of the term schedule, I prefer the term routine.
Okay.
Because a routine kind of implies that you do this, then you do this, then you do this. It's not schedule seems to be dependent upon dates and times. Whereas when you have little children, it seems like it is important to have a routine.
Right.
And
a routine is a little bit more flexible.
Exactly. It's a little bit more flexible. And so, hey, if you don't have breakfast at 8:00, that's okay, but you always get dressed before you have breakfast and then you do chores. The time is less important as it is the routine of the order in which things happen. I think that is
providing order.
Exactly. So I think that is very important. I think that's important for infants.
Right.
It's important to have some kind of routine, some kind of predictability, and so even if, your kids are pulling you in all different directions, like you said, you still can say, okay, well, we have to finish this first, and then we go to this, and then we go to this, so.
I'll buy that. I'll take routine.
Okay. So in looking at so we're going to talk about routine real quick, and then we're going to talk about, schedule, like, of other things outside the home. So within your routine, I do think, our opinion is that.
And just to be clear, this is all our opinion.
In case you didn't know that
already. You
can
accept it or you can be wrong. No. I mean, we usually say this, that we are not experts, but we're giving you some of the experiences that we've had, and hopefully they spark a conversation so you can disagree with us. That's
right.
Okay.
Maybe you do want to have a schedule down to the minute.
Because there are personalities. I should say that. There are certain personalities, both as parent and child, who really like and thrive in a more...
minute to minute
kind of schedule. But that's...
and those people lose their minds.
That's right. Or at least they drive me crazy.
So some things, but we digress.
Yeah, sorry.
So some things that we should have in our daily schedule is family dinner. It's important that you have a routine of having a family dinner, that you have family chores, that you have times when everyone is contributing to the household, even the little ones, that you have couple time. You and your spouse have time every day that you know that you're going to be together.
Right.
You have a bedtime. You have a regular bedtime for your children, which kind of corresponds with couple time. Usually.
I liked how that works out.
And then also prayer time. You need to have some kind of routine within your lives, in the lives of your family, where you're praying individually and that you're praying as a family.
And these are basically the big rocks in your life.
Exactly.
These are the big things that you make other things move around. Because I think, again, just to start as the basis of really a life well lived, and a Christian life must have these both spiritual and human needs met. And if you don't have those as part of your routine and schedule, then you're not living, and you're not living the way God would orient your life.
Right.
And the other things, there are other very important things, and you might have something that is as very important to you, but likely they're going to fit around these in order to make your family dynamic and your own peace and sanity work. Mm-hmm. And so getting those big rocks set, those boulders, if you will,
and maybe
gives you a foundation.
Maybe your particular family has some other big rocks that we didn't mention.
That's
you know
right.
what I mean?
That's
Like
right.
you have to figure out, what those are.
Yodeling, early morning, whatever it might be. Yeah.
Right, or I think about like families who like live on a farm or whatever. You know
That's
what
right.
I mean? Like
Take
those
care
are
of the
other
animals
big things.
or something like that.
Exactly.
Right?
That may just be something that's something that they just have to do every day. So, so then we have to look at our outside activities. Okay, so things outside of the big rocks. And those are things that do need to be scheduled, because when you go outside the home, obviously, you just can't get to your piano lesson whenever you want. Like that's at a certain time,
right?
In a certain place, and you have to have certain travel time built in and all of that. And so just before we start talking about your kids' activities, one thing is just, you got to realize that, structure is a good thing.
Is needed.
Is really needed, but too much structure, too much of we need to be at this place at this particular time. So this is not a routine. This is a schedule, a structure. Too much of that, for young children especially, can be very stressful.
Right.
And it's not really helpful.
Again, this is the part of the balance, right? Because I think young children thrive in a structure when there is no boundaries.
In a routine.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Having some structure in their lives, right? They need that. They need predictability. They need security that comes with that. There is. I do this, then I do this. Right, and then there's a good flow of things. And again, there are certain individuals who do need certain things at certain times, right? But again, if you become too rigid, if you kind of constrict that so that there isn't freedom, there isn't flexibility, there isn't opportunity for that, particularly that young child, to just be free and not be forced into something else, right? That's what you're saying.
Right. And particularly what we're speaking to here is a child who is at school all day, like say a 7-year-old who's at school all day. They come from school at 3.
Right.
And then at 3:30 or right afterwards, they go to karate on Mondays, and then they go to piano on Tuesdays, and then they go to library time on Wednesdays, and then they do, when you have a school, but then you have so many activities almost every day.
They don't have a breath.
They don't have a breath. Or then they have to come home, and then you eat dinner, and then they do homework, and then they go to bed.
It's nonstop stimulation, nonstop activity,
Exactly.
nonstop stress. Ultimately,
Yes.
not that your kid can't be active and they can't both use their mind or their body or whatever the situation might be, but it puts a lot of demands on a young little forming person.
Right. To be at a particular place at a particular time for so often. For adults, like we all have to live like that, but your children really shouldn't have to.
Right.
They need time to just be. Okay. So there has to be this balance. Because that being said, the kids do need time to just be and have unstructured time. The reality is that the family also cannot fulfill all of a child's needs.
That's
Like
right.
there are definitely times, especially as they get older, and we'll talk a little bit about teenagers in a little bit, where kids need to transition into the world and that they do need outside structure and activities to keep them busy and develop their talents. But that's your call as a parent. We just want you to just think about these principles and make sure that you have a good balance of unstructured time for your child, especially when they're younger, and then kind of move them into more structure as they get older.
Right, because again, this is our job as parents, is to have thread the needle, to figure out that balance. And every child is different, every family is different, and you've got to look at what the demands on your time, the opportunity that your kids have, and do your best. One thing we've said this before, but don't get stressed out about this. We'll give some ideas and principles here, but ultimately, remember, you are the parent that God chose to raise and form these kids. You're a steward over them, but what you can do is help raise them from the very earliest ages so that they know, what is a good use of my time? Where am I investing myself? And again, we talked about those big rocks. If you are witnessing that and living that and making a culture around some of those big things in your life, the other things will fit into place. And so we're talking about the outside activities primarily right now. But if you've got those big rocks together in your life, the family prayer, the dinner time together, all some of those big things taken care of, your child's going to have a greater strength and platform for them to flourish in their life.
Right. And, when we talk about like being intentional with your kids' activities, just keep in mind that this world is going to tell you, people in your culture, at your school, at, other moms or dads, that you're with, oh, your child should be doing, they should be starting karate by age 5. They should be dancing by age 3. They should be, they should be doing this. They should be doing that. But you know what? The reality is that the world sucks at raising kids. It really does. Like this culture they're horrible at it,
Yeah.
And so
The culture is the case in point. Yeah.
Exactly. So don't fall into that.
Right.
You have to kind of rise above and be countercultural and say, you know what? First of all, just the fact that you're a Catholic who is open to life and having kids, you're already countercultural.
That's
like
right.
you're already weird. Okay.
Yeah.
And many of you
This is the revolution.
Exactly. Many of you probably already realize that. But just kind of keep going in that vein and don't trust the world and their standards of what your child should be exposed to at what age. Don't let them dictate that.
Right.
Instead, be intentional and look at your child and their particular needs, and make your decisions based on that. Right. Okay. So let's start with the young children. All right, which we've kind of already mentioned. When I say young children, we mean like kids under the age of like 8 or 7. And the reality is that they don't really need a lot to do. There's certain activities that I think that are very helpful to put your kids in, like maybe, I was a kinder music educator, so of course I'm very partial to music.
Right.
But, all of our kids like played soccer, or the boys anyway, started playing soccer when they were like, 5 or 6 or so. But those were things that we had the time and the energy to do that.
Right. And we looked again, and this is like life in general, right? You look at what your family values. You look at who you are and as parents and what you believe your kids are, and you balance that. Because if you're really into something and you're going to spend time with your kids in that, because we know a lot of people who end up coaching the teams because they want to spend time with their kids.
Right.
And whether it be soccer, whether it be some other sport or art or theater or music or whatever.
Right.
It's like, those things matter and they're important and they're part of our culture, and they're part of what helps form and develop our kids intellectually, spiritually, and all of that. So these are all, again, good things.
Right.
But every kid is a little different. Every family is a little different. But
really, most importantly, especially if you have a young child who's in school all day, really when they come home from school, they just need space and they need room to think, to experiment, to be bored, and don't feel like you need to entertain them every second. I was just talking with my sister, because we're on vacation and she's with us, about how when you have a child who is trained, they can have more freedom.
That's right.
Like when I'm walking across the parking lot with my 4-year-old, I have trained her to stand next to me and to ask me if she can leave my side. That gives her freedom to not have to hold my hand because I've trained her to do that. And I know that she is going to listen to me.
And the shock collar helps too. I'm just kidding.
Don't have a shock collar, no. And so she has the freedom to skip or, whatever, to swing her arms, blah, 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 because I've trained her to do that, to stand next to me. And so I think that when you're in your home and if you've trained your child how to use paints without making a huge mess, well, then they have the freedom to do that, within your home. And so it's worth it to kind of spend your time training your children about the rules in your home so you can just let them go. And just let them be.
And that ultimately is the truth of Christian life, because the moral life, the virtues, is about training us in the way that we should go so that we actually have more freedom.
To enjoy life.
And because freedom isn't being enslaved. And that's what we want to do with our kids, is give them that kind of freedom. And I do think that, without a question, that this world in general, our culture, and many of us have just fallen into this lie that we need to over-schedule and over-demand and, like you had said earlier, and I think particularly for those young kids, the last generation or so, we've really tried to overschedule our kids and overstimulate them and put them to a point where they don't even know what to do by themselves.
You know what it is? I really think that people don't want to train their kids at home, so they bring them. Oh my gosh, I'm going to go more babysitting after school. They're in school all day. Well, now I'm going to bring them to soccer practice for an hour and a half, so I don't have to deal with them and let the coach deal with these kids who are unstructured. As opposed to, I know my kid is going to stay in my yard. I've trained them to do that, so I can let them go and play soccer outside in my yard because I know they'll stay there. Do you know what I mean? And if you haven't done that, you're like, well, I can't let my kid play outside. They might run away. They might blah, 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 whatever.
Right.
And so, but if you train your kids,
and there's also,
they can have more freedom to play.
And there also is some fear, fear that I'm messing up as a parent, that I'm not giving them all the whatever. And the reality is that we had very intelligent, bright people who had lots of unstructured playtime, because you will never, your child will never figure things out if they're always told what to do. Again, right? I'm not saying that you do that with an infant or necessarily with a toddler or whatever, but it's like as you grow, you should be giving them more and more opportunities under your auspices, under your umbrella, under your roof, where they are exploring and freely choosing good and healthy entertainment, activities, development, all of that. Of course, you're there to direct them. Of course, you're there to correct them. Of course, you're all that. But when you look at their schedule, you need to think, this kid needs downtime. This kid needs some nothing. Go and just do whatever you want to do.
Time to do hammer and nails downstairs in your basement.
That's right.
Time to create stuff with their Legos.
I love
time to
Lego
just sit there and draw.
Yeah.
And just do.
And for some of you might need to put that on a schedule. If a schedule really helps you, say this is Lego time.
This is unstructured time.
Yeah, you do whatever you want to do.
This is the time for you to
don't blow anything up, but go have fun.
Exactly. So you really have to find but what is important to your child and to your family, and then do that really well, because it is a legitimate pursuit to invest in your child's little league or wrestling or dance or singing or piano lessons or whatever. That is absolutely legitimate. But you have to really be choosy on how much you are investing in your child. Just to share a little story of a kind of like a very sad example of this. I was at the park because I dropped my child off somewhere and I was like, waiting for them to be done a lesson or something. So I just drove to a park to kind of just sit there and do some work in the car. And I saw this man, I'm going to say father. I don't know if it was his father, but let's assume it's a father, working with his maybe 10, 12-year-old son in the batting cages. And I am telling you, it was like all I could do to not go over there.
Which is the batting cages, just in case for Europeans, that's baseball, American baseball. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know.
For those people, our international listeners, this
know.
is American baseball, batting cages. The ball comes out, kid hits it, person hits it with the bat. But anyway, but it was like all I could do to not go over there and just tell this father that you're screwing up your kid. You need to lay off of him. It was so, I actually just started staring at him. Hopefully he would see that you're staring at him. This father was just like berating this boy. Like, why didn't you hit that? Blah, blah. And then when the kid did hit it, he was like, that's what you should do every time. You got to do it like that every time. And blah, just like your classic, like what you'd see on like a movie, like a TV show or something of this father just like berating this boy. And I was just like I feel like I was witnessing the death of this kid's love of baseball.
Yeah.
If this kid loved baseball, this father was doing everything he could to beat the love of baseball out of him. That's what I felt like I was seeing. And it made me just really think about in preparing for this podcast. When we invest time and energy in our child doing something, like learning some talent, we really have to think, why am I doing
What's
this?
the point?
Yeah, exactly. What is the point? Because you know what? If you're putting your kid in an activity because they are an extension of yourself, right. If you see your child doing this activity and their success is your success, then you need to get over yourself.
You've got issues.
You definitely have issues. And it's like, I was thinking it's almost like child abuse, because that child is an individual person unto themselves.
That's right.
And if they succeed, it's their success. And you can cheer for them and encourage them and all of that. And if they stink at it, well, then they need to own that too.
That's right. That's part of life. That's okay.
That is
We're not good at everything.
Exactly.
Didn't we do a whole podcast on you can't be all that you...
Yes.
You can't be anything you want?
You can't be anything you want to be. Yes, so that's another podcast we can link to at the end of this one. But really, what is the point of sports?
Right. I mean, the point at the end of it is to really grow in, again, let's just use sports. And it could be anything here, but to grow in your abilities, grow in your dexterity, grow in your ability and knowledge of your body, to become physically fit, right? To grow, hopefully, in character, to advance. I mean, winning and losing, there's some great things that go with that, right?
Discipline.
Learning how to play on a team, learning how to, coordinate,
absolutely.
eye-hand coordination, brain development that happens in a lot of these activities, but also just to have fun. Right. And I also think that in spite of this guy who is obviously had issues, right? Mm-hmm. But we're called as parents to help develop our children's gifts and talents. I think that's ultimately what we're trying to do, is because they have a calling, a mission from God, and we're to invest their time in things that we believe, as we can perceive them, that we can kind of draw and cull from our little experiences that we're having of our children. What are they good at? Where do they need to be investing their time for their future? Because that'll determine maybe jobs, maybe things that they'll just bring them pure joy and enjoyment. And we're supposed to help develop those gifts and talents because God gave those to them. If they have a physical ability, I have a good friend who had... Sorry, you say something?
No, I was just going to say that's where self-esteem comes from.
Yeah.
When you develop your gifts and talents and then you're successful, that's how kids get self-esteem. They don't get self-esteem by you saying 1,000 times, good job, good job, good job.
They do not, no matter how many trophies you give them, that does not build their self-esteem. Them accomplishing something based upon their effort, based upon their gifts and talents, and them succeeding, winning in whatever way that looks like, that is building your child up. That's filling them up. That shows them, yes, I can do this. Not everyone's going to be great at every activity, sporting or theater or whatever it might be, the arts. But it is about exposing our children to these multiple activities and investing in them, because ultimately you want to deepen your relationship with them through this. But to let this be an offering that they could take whatever raw materials they have, putting time and energy into it, and so that they can make this a greater offering.
What were you going to say about your friend?
Oh no, but I had a good friend whose son was really exceptional at sports, and he was kind of conflicted. Do I step in and do I help make sure that he excels? Not with his own son, but even with the team that he was on. He's like, I don't want to be that dad that is, forcing my son into the number one spot. And he says, but on the other side, there's politics involved with, who's getting playing time and stuff like that. And he's like, well, he ended up, I after talking to him, I was like, from what you're telling me, he's got gifts, he's got talents, and it's just politics and BS. I would step in. And he did. And his son is flourishing. The team is flourishing. And he's really gone to whole new heights. And it worked out. Not in every situation you should probably exert that, because I'm not a huge believer in intervention that way as a parent, only because I think it's good for kids to work things out. Right. But when there are adults making political decisions about who gets playtime or whatever, there might be a place for an adult to step in. Right. But again, that's in a limited situation. But again, at the core of it, I think this kid's got the potential of becoming a professional athlete from all that they're saying. And so it's like, yeah, that's worth investing more in than you would, because most of our kids will never
99% of
will
kids
probably not play past high school. Maybe some of them will play in college, but that will probably be the end of their athletic career. Again, for the most of them, there are exceptions to that, but recognizing that, let's not overstress the kid.
Exactly.
Let's focus on
really
character development, their gifts, their talents, and developing their character so they know how to win, lose, play part of a team, and go from there.
Right. So that would be like for younger kids. And I just want to say a note about teenagers, with teenagers and activities. Because I think that, and those teenage years, that outside activities really are very much needed. And this may be a time when, if you have a child who's very reticent to get involved in anything, that you may need to kind of really push them. Yeah. Because just like we were saying before, that work and accomplishment, and accomplishing even like something, you've beat yourself. You know what I mean? Like you're improving yourself. That's where kids get self-esteem from.
That's right.
That's where that self-esteem grows. And there's no other time in their life when they need that more than when they are teenagers.
And kids are reticent to do that oftentimes. Maybe they feel inadequate. I think a lot of teenagers feel inadequate at, no matter, even if they are good, they don't have their own, they're at a weird hormonal, peer pressure, culture, blah, blah, blah. But those are important things for them to step out.
Because it helps them to form an identity too, of like, who am I? Like I'm a soccer. I mean, ultimately their identity should be, I am a son or daughter of God. That being said, that I think that when you're part of a team or a sport or theater, like my son Patrick was part of the soccer team. So when I remember when he started high school, it was really easy for him to get in there because he was already practicing with the team. He had already formed relationships. Right. Like our daughter Maura, when she went to a new high school, she got involved in theater, and that became her identity. Like she wasn't like the star of the show or anything, but working with the theater and being part of that group, that was part of her identity. And it was a really good and healthy thing that she could really develop that side of herself with that group. So I think it is important that teenagers have those outside activities. And maybe it's not even something in school. Maybe it's training horses. Maybe it's their particular job. Maybe it's their artistic and, that's what they do. Whatever it is, I think that they definitely need those things. But always you as the parent have to make sure that they have time for study, they have time for rest, and that they have time for family. We have really had to fight for our family time with some of our teenagers. But it's important.
And this is really where the rubber hits the road, because I feel like that obviously we were in charge of our little kids' schedules. And
that's right.
And if we got over booked, that really was our fault. That wasn't our little kids' fault. And sometimes we didn't realize what we signed up for when we said, oh yeah, you're going to be in Scouts. Well, I didn't realize it was every week or whatever it might have been. But when they're teenagers, they're often now choosing things.
They're committing to things. And you're like, wait, what? What are you doing?
No. I did not sign up for that. And I have to do what?
Yeah.
And I think it's just important at this time to really, really be both charitable and everything that we do with our kids, recognizing that when they join particularly an athletic team, but really probably any group, if you will, or activity like that, there is an identity that forms with them. And there is a a good part of that. There's also a negative part that they might just go along with the crowd and just to fit in. And as teenagers, we as their parents need to help balance that they don't claim their whole identity, that they don't start claiming more identity out of the home than they do in the home.
Exactly.
And your home, assuming you have more than one child, it's important to have that teenager a part of your family culture, your family time, because they're a vital member. Hopefully you've invested in them and loved them, and you've taught virtues as well as giving them the ideals of prayer time and so forth, so that when they're teenagers, they're bearing fruit in your family, and that they're even maybe volunteering and helping out with the younger kids in any substantial ways.
It's kind of like those big rocks that we talked about before. You got to make sure that those big rocks are in place even when they're teenagers.
That's right.
Like that and I understand, like, sometimes family dinners don't always happen, and we've certainly been through seasons of that, like when they're in a play, or they're in soccer season or whatever, where maybe their schedule is such that maybe they can't be there all the time.
Right.
And then, we just kind of deal with that.
Right.
But we always kind of make sure that they know that we're going to get back to this, because this is a value in our home, and this is the ideal that we're all striving for.
Yeah, don't let the exception become the rule.
Exactly.
Because,
don't give up.
As an example, some of our kids wanted to be in a play. Well, we ended up the entire family going because we wanted to stay together, and we got more kids into this community theater than we anticipated in the beginning, but it turned out to be a great experience.
Right.
And, do what you need to do to fight for those, like that family dinner time and things of that nature, and recognizing, well, there's just not going to be, and it's not always going to be perfect. And it's not always going to be right on the spot, but figure out, again, those big rocks, and make sure you've communicated them all along. So when your teenager gets to that moment, it's not a shock to them when they say, no, hey, it's family game night.
Right.
You know what? No, you can't go out with your soccer buddies for whatever, whatever it might be. That those are the sorts of things that you need to, but then you have to recognize, as they get older, there are going to be things, now we have our first child off, not living at home, off on our first job. And that's our goal as parenting, is to launch them. And so
they have their own lives.
That's right.
And you got to get used to that.
And it's there's a beauty to that, both from your heart and your dynamic as a family, but also for them to know that they are slowly, not jumping into the deep end right away, but slowly throughout their teenage years, giving them a little bit more slack, giving them a little bit more opportunity, but never losing the fact that you want the strong, I don't know, vortex probably has a bad term, but the vortex of your family culture is still keeping them, drawing them in as part of it, not as a negative thing, but just as a hopefully a very positive culture that they're going to sustain themselves and give them real identity.
One of my daughters, I was talking to them about doing this podcast, and she said, it's important to be away from your family so you realize how much you need your family. So sometimes it's good. It's like distance makes the heart grow fonder, absence makes the heart grow fonder. Even when you're like really busy with your schedule, and then when they come home for family dinner, that they can have time to just, I'm just with my family. I can just relax here. Like I can just be. And just like we were saying with the little kids, they need more time, unstructured time to just be. Well, that's true with teenagers as well. But I just want to say one thing about kids having, boys especially, having too much unstructured time as teenagers.
Very true.
I will never forget the summer of my son Patrick's freshman year. So he was not old enough to get a job, and he was too old to just kind of like run around in the woods and play anymore. And I remember him being there in my living room all summer with barely anything to do, and feeling like he was like a ticking time bomb, like right in the middle of my living room. Like I was like, oh my gosh, I need to give him something to do, because there's all this like energy, all of this male energy. And I'm like, he's just going to get into trouble. Like, he's just going to get into trouble if I don't find something for him to do.
An idle boy is the devil's workshop.
Yes, exactly. So anyway, So you have to make sure that you don't give them too much unstructured time, especially when they're teenagers, because they have to start developing, their gifts and their talents and working. So basically what we did is that I found somebody who would hire him for a couple hours a day to give him some work to do, because I was like, I'm never doing that again.
But I have to say, he's got an amazing work ethic now. And I think it was because we instilled that in him. And he is a really super hard worker, very dedicated and focused in his work.
Right.
So we kind of mentioned this already, but I think that the last part of this is how much activity is too much for parents, right? How to balance this all, because we've got all these needs of our kids, but we also have some challenges for our own sake.
Right, because I always felt like in a perfect world, I would be able to give all this time and money to this child, and all this time and money to this child, and all this time and money to this child. But the reality is that I only have so much time and I only have so much money.
That's right.
So you can't, so don't be afraid to, you never want to stress yourself out in feeling like, oh, I have 5 kids and I need to do the same thing. I need to give them all the same opportunities. I need to give them all the same. No, you don't.
Right.
I
think that's important to recognize that, because again, if you have one child or if you have 2 children, you start thinking, oh, I've got to divide all this up and give them all the best of everything. And then either A, your money's out, or more likely your time is gone. You just cannot do that. And there will be some kids who, are like, why, mommy, can't we do this? So-and-so did this. Every child is different and every season of your life is different.
Right.
So one, get over it. Get over the fact that you can't be a perfect parent. Mm-hmm. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that.
And your child is going to be fine.
That's right.
They will be fine.
You are the parent that God chose. So if you got a problem with this, take it up with God.
Right.
That doesn't mean that you aren't going to have to invest time and resources in developing your children. But remember, your sanity is part of God's plan.
Exactly. And I think that, too, we have to stop putting so much pressure on ourselves that we need to watch each of our children's soccer practices, that we need to be at every sports game. You know what? No, you don't.
That's right.
No, you don't. There are many, many, many times with all of my children that I have somebody else, we carpool, somebody else brings them to the game, or I bring them to the game and I drop them off and I have to leave because I need to take care of other kids. And you know what? None of them were scarred for
That's
life.
Right.
My son Patrick, he played soccer all the way up through college and he was totally fine, And because also we have the relationship with our children that if they want us there have been times when I've asked my kids, do you want me to come to the game or not? 9 times out of 10, they say, I don't care. But if they say, no, I really would like you to come to this, then I come.
Right. And we also have a relationship.
Exactly.
Where they can freely say, yeah, I really want you to be there, or it's not a big deal. And the fact that we have 10 kids requires us to make choices. And it actually might be more difficult when you've got only 1 or 2 kids, because then you're feeling like, I don't got any excuse. Mm-hmm. You might. I mean, maybe you don't, but it's...
Well, sometimes it's not a bad thing to have your child perform without you watching them. Because like what we were saying before is like their performance needs to be their own. They need to be performing and doing well on the sports field or whatever because they want to, because it's for them. It shouldn't be because, I want my parents to be proud of me. They should do it for their own sake.
Right. You have a good measure of them being... you being proud of them knowing that, all of that. But on the other side, there's an independence that comes.
Exactly.
A beautiful independence. Something that is awesome that you want to develop in your children. And if you're taking care of them, if you're the helicopter parent, always hovering over like a drone,
right.
They don't know how to stand on their own 2 feet sometimes. And I think of our kids, like whether it be getting even just something as simple as them taking care of getting their rides back from a sporting activity. When they make that transition, when they're old enough to start working out and coordinating with their friends and figuring out,
when their
and
friends
we'll
are
drive,
and stuff.
and then their friends, parents will pick up or what, things like that. But it's just like getting them to a place where they have more responsibility for that is a good thing. And a larger family just requires that. We have to delegate. We have to give them ownership of that. That's giving them ownership of their time. That's giving them responsibility. That's entrusting them with something special.
And I think that, too, you will find the kids who have extra talents and extra things that you really need to hone in on, that you need to really invest some extra time and energy in. Like I remember Patrick... he really wanted to do, just to kind of use him as the soccer thing as an example. Like he was getting really good, and there was this like extra $400 like thing that he had wanted to do over the summer. And it was like at the, tail end of his, in the second half of his high school career. And so we invested in that, because he was one of the top players on his team and he wanted to get better. And so it's, you know what? It's worth it for him to do that. Or like our daughter Maggie right now is an incredible musician, and we're investing in a really quality, she's 15, and we're investing in a real quality teacher for her. And it's a half an hour drive there. It's an hour lesson, a half an hour drive back. But you know what? It's worth it. I don't think I'll be able to do this for every kid, but for her, because she has this specific talent, and she's very, very good. It's so beautiful to watch her, to listen to her play and just watch her play. But that's a gift. It's a gift to her, and I think it's going to be a gift to the world, because the music that she's playing is beautiful. And so now, will I be able to do that for another child? I don't know, but I just know that like right now I'm called to do this, and we can't pressure ourselves like, oh, if I do this for this child, I need to do this for every child, Yeah. No, you don't. You just need to, just kind of realize that your kids are going to feel your love, and they're going to know your love and your investment through more than their activities.
Yeah.
And so you have to balance the needs of your family and the parents, mom and dad's needs, along with the needs of those children. It's all a balancing act, and just pray that God fills in the gaps.
That's right. That's right. And that's the best really we can do. And it is, again, so going back to the very beginning, our time reflects what we value and what we prioritize. And we're teaching our kids, both in the younger years, what we value, passing on our values, our priorities, so that become habits and virtues in their lives. And then as they're teenagers, we're not just giving them things that we value, but hopefully creating structure so that they can create their routines, because that's what they should be doing. As they're teenagers, we should be thinking we're helping them develop their own rhythm of life, their own routine that's going to hopefully carry them and give them a sustaining foundation for the rest of their lives. Those are the big rocks that really matter.
All right, so that was an oldie but goodie, right?
I think that I'm still like, okay, there are new applications to that, but the principles are still solid.
Because we first did that podcast, that was
very early on.
Yeah, maybe 5-6 years ago that we did that. And even our life is so different now than it was then, because now we have grandchildren, we have all teenagers for the most part, And so anyway, it still applies. So some things for you to think about. First of all, talk about with your spouse, where in our life are we too busy? Mm-hmm. Is it in the evenings? Is it in the afternoons? Is it on weekends? Where are we too busy? And where can we make time for what really matters? Yeah. Okay, so think about your life. Take some time to think about your schedule. Think about your weekly routine, even monthly. And are you able to make time for what really matters? Because in some ways, being busy isn't a bad thing if you're able to prioritize and make time for those truly important things: your spiritual life, your marriage, your children.
And finally, talk about where you might need a new routine, because this kind of goes back to the podcast we did just before with the well-ordered family. We need routines. We need some systems that helps reduce the stress, the pain that comes with all the things that we have to do. We all have a lot of things to do, but the more that we can have a routine, the more that we can have a pattern, it's healthier and better for our kids, but it also makes it easier for us as a parent to really make that a part of our culture, right? So those are two or three questions there for you to look at and unpack. Are you too busy? And if so, how do we fix that, right? Yeah. Okay. Well, again, if you would like more information on signing up for the family board meeting, or if you're open to and interested in supporting the good work of the Messy Family Project, please visit us at messyfamilyproject.org. And until next time, may the Lord bless you and keep you. Family, we're taking a chance.